Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. This is where silence tells louder stories than shouting ever could. Let's begin. It started with a calendar notification. Brielle, 6 p.m., dinner. Not her calendar. Mine. The kind I used to color code with hope. I stared at that little box on my screen for what felt like hours, not because I was waiting for her, but because I finally wasn't. I didn't light a candle. I didn't set the table. I didn't even bother to vacuum up the crumbs from the dinner I'd microwaved the night before. Because this time, I already knew she wouldn't come. And I wasn't disappointed. I was prepared. But let me rewind. Not to the love story, because this isn't that kind of confession. There was love, sure. There was laughter, and texting until 3 a.m., and pretending bad coffee tasted good because she made it. But if you're here for the butterflies and first dates, you're about a year too late. No, this is a post-mortem. This is me, Ellery. Yes, that's my real name. Thanks, Mom. Dissecting a relationship that died not with a scream, but with a steady string of notifications that said, maybe later, I'm tired, rain check. Brielle was never a monster. She was a magician. She made time disappear. Every time we planned something, anything, it dissolved. She'd vanish behind work calls, sudden migraines. Sorry, my friend is going through something. Or ugh. I completely lost track of time. At first, I tried. I rescheduled, waited patiently, even defended her to my own self-doubt, like a lawyer defending someone who never showed up in court. I convinced myself that her life was complicated, that I was being selfish, that love sometimes looked like waiting on read receipts for hours and pretending they didn't matter. I used to set reminders to not text too much. I muted my needs. The excuses kept coming, like clockwork. Her dog was sick. Her cousin was in town. She was on her period. She was off her period and needed me time. She was thinking deeply about her career. Her landlord had an emergency. Her phone was acting weird. She dropped it in water. She lost her charger. She just forgot. I became an unpaid actor in a one-woman play called Unavailability. But I still stayed in the audience. The night that broke me wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks or a big betrayal. It was Tuesday. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Thai place she swore she wanted to try. I watched the door, refreshing my texts, rehearsing how I'd pretend not to be upset when she walked in late. She didn't walk in, but my phone lit up at 6:48 p.m. Can we do Thursday instead? Just so drained. You're the best. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete the calendar event either. I just stared at it. That night, I drove home with a bag of spring rolls and a mind full of questions I no longer needed answers to. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry. I felt nothing. And that nothing felt like a breakthrough. The next day, I deleted every upcoming event with her name on it. Canceled plans she didn't know we had. And I turned off notifications. No more sorry. No more next time. No more waiting to be prioritized. She always gave me excuses. Now I give her absence. They say silence is golden, but I think that's just something people say when they're too afraid to admit it feels like being buried alive. The morning after I deleted every calendar event with her name on it, my apartment felt too quiet. No music, no texts, no voice notes saying, "Morning, sleepyhead." I didn't hear her usual excuses, and for a second, my brain panicked, like it missed the abuse. Isn't that tragic? You spend so long getting crumbs that when nothing falls, you convince yourself you're starving. I stared at my phone for hours that day. I'd turned off notifications, but I still checked the home screen, like some kind of addict hoping for one last fix. I thought maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd notice the absence. Maybe she'd feel that strange pull in her chest when someone important withdraws. She didn't. Instead, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and my own stupid breathing. I kept pacing, checking the peephole, going back to the balcony like I was expecting her to suddenly appear, smiling sheepishly with a, "Hey, I messed up." But the silence stayed, and it started speaking louder than anything she'd ever said. Because in the quiet, I began replaying things I had buried deep under denial. Things I shrugged off. Words I let slide. Like how she once said, "You're just a really easy person to disappoint," after canceling on my birthday plans. I had laughed it off at the time. Thought she was being self-aware. Witty. I even told her, "Well, that's because I don't expect much." God, I wish I could go back and slap that version of me. I had become so used to being an afterthought that I confused it with being chill. But her silence, now that I wasn't reaching out, it was different. It wasn't passive. It was deliberate, calculated, like she didn't care, or worse, that she expected me to cave. I think she was waiting for my usual routine, a follow-up text, an "Are you okay?" message, maybe even a dumb meme to break the tension. But I sent nothing. For once, I let the silence speak. And it told me everything I needed to know, that I had been the only one holding the weight of the relationship. That love, when unreciprocated, is just emotional debt. Around 5 p.m., I got a DM from her friend Clarice. We were never close, but she followed me after Brielle, and I went public. Her message just said, "You good?" Brielle posted something weird. I hesitated, then opened Instagram. I hadn't checked her page in days. The story was just a selfie of her in her bathroom mirror, dressed up, makeup flawless. Captioned, "Sometimes it's better to be adored from afar than tolerated up close." No mention of me, no tag, but it was a message, a public one, a dig dressed up in poetic nonsense. That's when it clicked. She didn't just make excuses to avoid me. She crafted a narrative where she was the misunderstood free spirit, and I was the emotionally clingy inconvenience. That realization hit harder than any argument could have, because it wasn't just the lies. It was how easily she rewrote the story once I stopped playing my part. I went back to Clarice's message and replied, "Thanks for checking in. I'm fine now. Just tired of auditioning for someone who never planned to cast me." She didn't reply, but that night, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was earned, chosen, mine. I poured a glass of wine, turned off my phone completely, and played the one jazz record Brielle always said gave her a headache. And for the first time in months, I didn't care. Something strange happens when you stop chasing someone who's used to being pursued. It creates a void, not just for them, but for the ecosystem around them. And in Brielle's world, her ecosystem was made of a tightly curated group of people who thought I was the lucky one to have her. Until I disappeared. I didn't block anyone. I didn't post anything dramatic or vague. I just went offline. Quietly. Fully. The kind of silence that makes people wonder if they should be worried or offended. 3 days into my retreat, I got a message from someone I never expected, Shayla. Now, Shayla was part of Brielle's inner circle. Like, help her choose outfits for her date's clothes. We'd spoken maybe 5 times. She once called me wholesome, in that condescending way people use when they mean boring. I wasn't exactly a fan, but her message read, "Hey, can I say something that might not be my place?" My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity is a drug when you've lived on silence. So I replied, "Sure, floor's yours." She waited a few minutes, then sent this. "You didn't deserve how she treated you. I kept quiet because I thought you knew, but maybe you didn't." I sat up, heart racing. Knew what? Shayla didn't sugarcoat it. She sent 3 long messages, no emojis, no cryptic language, just raw facts. Brielle had been emotionally checked out for months. She'd complained about me constantly, said I was needy, too available, smothering. And yet, she never once mentioned that to me, just to her friends, painting a version of the relationship that made her seem trapped and me seem clingy. But it got worse. Shayla admitted Brielle had gone on a weekend trip back in March. The same weekend she told me her grandmother was sick and she needed to fly home alone. Shayla wasn't on that trip, but she saw the pictures. Brielle had gone with a guy named Keaton. Tall, beard, tattoos. The polar opposite of me. Nothing physical happened, Shayla wrote. At least not that I know of. But emotionally, she was with him. That trip wasn't innocent. You were lied to. I just stared at the screen, rereading it over and over. The worst part? I remembered that weekend vividly. I'd packed a small care package for her grandmother. Hand lotion, herbal teas, crossword books, and Brielle had smiled like I was the sweetest man on earth. She kissed me on the cheek at the airport, told me she'd call once she landed. She never did. She texted once. Flight was long. Talk tomorrow? That was it. And while I sat at home, refreshing the airline tracker and worrying if her grandmother was okay, she was drinking cocktails in a pool with a man whose name I'd never even heard. I didn't respond to Shayla right away. I just sat there, watching the walls shift around me. The memories rearranged themselves. What once felt like love now looked like manipulation. Her, "I'm tired," suddenly felt like, "I'm tired of you." Her, "maybe next time," echoed with never. And the saddest thing? I still missed her. That's the hardest part no one tells you about betrayal. You don't stop missing them when the truth arrives. You just start missing a version of them that never existed. Eventually, I thanked Shayla. Told her I appreciated her honesty. She replied with something I'll never forget. You were her fallback. But that doesn't mean you have to stay fallen. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my brain was hosting a riot. I kept picturing Brielle in a hotel room, smiling at Keaton the way she used to smile at me. I kept remembering how I had defended her to my friends, my family, even to myself. I defended a person who would rather lie to me than lose the convenience of having me in her life. The next morning, I deleted every photo we had together. Not out of rage, not even out of heartbreak, but because I realized none of them were real. I was the only one smiling honestly in those pictures. The only one fully present. The only one believing in what we had. And belief without evidence? That's just self-inflicted delusion. I didn't confront Brielle. I didn't tell her what I knew. I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had space in my mind. I just kept giving her what she hated most. Silence. And this time, I wasn't waiting for her to notice. It happened on a Wednesday. The kind of Wednesday where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. Overcast skies. Leftover soup. A silent phone. Just another quiet checkpoint in my healing process. Or so I thought. I was halfway through reorganizing my bookshelf, trying to distract myself from falling into old thought patterns, when my phone buzzed. Not a message. A call. Her name lit up the screen like a flare I wasn't ready for. Brielle. I froze. It had been 12 days since I'd last texted her. 11 since I'd deleted our photos. 10 since I'd learned about Keaton and the not-romantic weekend trip. I hadn't reached out. Hadn't liked a post. Hadn't even scrolled her stories. I had gone full ghost, and for once, it wasn't a game. It was survival. But now here she was, breaking the silence. I didn't answer. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I let it ring until it stopped. I told myself I wouldn't engage, that I didn't know her a damn thing. But a minute later, she texted, "Hey, just wondering if everything's okay. You've been quiet. I miss you." Miss me? The words stung harder than they should have. Because no, she didn't miss me. She missed access to me. She missed the convenience. The soft place to land when her world got too loud. She missed the emotional safety net I provided, not the actual person I was. Not the man who memorized how she took her coffee, who sent her poetry at 2 a.m., who defended her even when my gut told me not to. I didn't reply right away. I put the phone down, made a cup of tea, stared out the window for a while. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from an ache I didn't know how to place. It was like my body still remembered how much it had wanted her, even though my mind now knew the cost. An hour later, another text. Did I do something? You've just vanished. That one almost made me laugh. Did I do something? Like she hadn't been slowly ghosting me in 100 small, soul-cutting ways for the better part of the year. Like her vanishing act on my birthday. Like the weekend she lied about visiting her grandmother, but went on a secret trip with another man. Like every excuse she used to avoid intimacy, presence, and real commitment. Excuses she dressed up with emojis and late night, "I'm just tired" calls. I sat down and wrote a long message. I poured out everything. The truth Shayla had told me, the screenshots I'd seen, how long I'd been holding my breath hoping Brielle would change. But I didn't send it. Not because I was afraid. Not because she didn't deserve to hear it. I didn't send it because I realized she didn't need to hear it. It would have been closure for me, not accountability for her. And I didn't need her to understand anymore. I didn't need her validation. I didn't need a confession or an apology. I didn't need to know if she'd kissed Keaton or if she really thought I was too available. I had already lived that pain in real time. I didn't want to rerun. So I did something I never thought I'd have the strength to do. I left her on read. No reaction. No explanation. Just the same silence she had served me for months. And maybe that's petty. Maybe that's immature. But it felt powerful. I thought that would be the end of it. That she'd get the message and retreat back into her curated little world where I didn't exist unless she needed comfort. But an hour later, the third message came in. "I know I haven't been great lately. Can we please just talk?" It was short, careful, defensive and soft, all in one. But it was too late. She didn't get to choose the moment she cared. She didn't get to knock on the door after setting the house on fire and ask if she could come inside and explain. No, this time, the door stayed shut. Instead of replying, I put on my shoes and left the apartment. No destination in mind. I just walked. Past the coffee shop where we had our last decent date. Past the bookstore where I once bought her a journal she never wrote in. Past the street corner where I'd waited in the rain for her to show up to a dinner she never arrived for. And as I walked, I realized I wasn't grieving her anymore. I was grieving myself. The version of me that kept holding space for someone who never showed up. The guy who believed in potential over reality. The man who confused effort with value. That version of me was fading, slowly, quietly, like fog lifting from a city skyline. By the time I got home, her name was still on my phone screen. I didn't open the message. I didn't delete it either. I just left it there. A final echo in a room I had already walked out of. There's something ironic about becoming a ghost in someone's life after they've spent so long pretending you weren't really there. The days following her last message were quiet again, but a different kind of quiet. Not the suffocating, lonely kind. This was cleaner. Like the space you feel in a room once clutter has been cleared. I didn't respond to her. Didn't block her. I just continued. As if she were a chapter I'd finished reading, and I had no interest in rereading the painful parts. And that's when the strangest things started happening. People began noticing me. Not the version of me who sat patiently on the sidelines of Brielle's chaotic life. Not the man edited out of group photos or cropped from stories. No, this time, I became the one people whispered about. The man who vanished. The one who stopped orbiting around her, stopped asking, "Are you okay?" and started becoming the question himself. It started with mutual friends. A guy named Rowan, someone I barely knew outside of a few double dates, messaged me late one night. "Bro, not to get in your business, but what happened with Brielle? She's acting weird." Weird how? I didn't ask, but I already knew. Brielle was the type who thrived off of being chased. Silence, to her, wasn't peace, it was punishment. She didn't understand how someone like me, the dependable one, the good listener, the man who once rearranged a work trip to attend her coworker's art show, could just stop. Because the truth is, she had always expected me to stay, not because she loved me, but because I was safe. And now, I had become unreachable. I could almost feel her spinning, crafting new excuses. He's just going through something. He needs space. He's probably mad about work or something I forgot to do. But none of it explained why I hadn't replied, why I hadn't liked her posts, why I had removed every trace of her from my world like she'd never been there at all. Then came the accidental encounter. I hadn't expected to see her that night. I was meeting my friend Dom at a jazz bar across town. We were halfway through drinks when I noticed her in the corner. Brielle, in a wine-colored dress I remembered helping her pick out for a holiday party last year. She hadn't seen me yet. Her back was to the door, but I recognized the laugh. That effortless, curated charm she turned on for others. The version of herself she always polished in public. Dom noticed the shift in my expression. "You good?" I nodded, even though my stomach was doing somersaults. But then I did something I hadn't done in months. I stayed. I didn't leave. Didn't slink out the back like a character in some tragic rom-com. I ordered another drink. I laughed at Dom's terrible impressions. I lived, openly, in the same space as her, and didn't collapse. At some point, she turned and saw me. Her face flickered. First confusion, then surprise, then something that almost looked like discomfort. She didn't wave. Neither did I. But I watched her, and I realized something chilling. She looked nervous, like she wasn't sure how to exist now that I was no longer orbiting her. It was the first time I saw Brielle off script. Unrehearsed. Unsure. She was always the one in control, always 10 steps ahead, master of the situation. But now she was just a girl in a crowded room watching the man she never thought would walk away, simply be gone. I didn't speak to her. I didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. By the time the night ended, I felt lighter, not healed. Let's not pretend this is some neatly wrapped redemption arc. But I felt present. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't in emotional debt to someone who never paid attention. And I could see it on her face as I left, that slight tilt of the head, that tightening in her jaw. She had questions now, questions I would never answer. That's the thing about silence. When you finally learn to wield it, it becomes louder than any apology. I don't know why I checked her profile that morning. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe it was weakness. Maybe I was trying to convince myself that I didn't care by proving how long I could scroll without reacting. But the truth is, it only took 5 seconds to find what I wasn't even looking for. She had posted a photo, Just a black and white shot of her coffee mug and a rain-streaked window. It was artsy, melancholic, something she would have captioned with a Sylvia Plath quote a year ago. But this time, the caption was different. It read, "Sometimes we don't realize what we're destroying until it's gone. And sometimes, we knew all along. We just thought it would wait forever." No tags, no names, no direct address. But I knew. It was for me. And yet, it wasn't. Because when someone uses a public platform to apologize, they're not really apologizing to you. They're managing perception. They're curating sympathy. They're cleaning up the image of who they want to be seen as, not making amends with the person they actually hurt. I stared at that post for a long time. Not because it moved me, because it felt like watching someone cry at a funeral they scheduled for a death they caused. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't share it with friends to get validation or emotional backup. I just closed the app and sat there in the stillness, trying to figure out how I felt. And what I realized was this. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt insulted. Because that post was her way of clearing her conscience without doing any of the real work. No late-night message with a real apology. No accountability. No direct words like, "I lied," or "I betrayed your trust," or "I used you." Just a vague, sad girl caption designed to catch attention and make people wonder who hurt her. As if she were the victim. As if my absence had somehow blindsided her. It felt like watching a magician pull a dove from their sleeve after setting the audience's coat on fire. Distracting. Hollow. Pretty, but meaningless. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Shayla again. "Did you see her post?" I didn't reply. She followed up. "She thinks you'll cave. She's already told people you're just processing stuff, and that you'll probably reach out soon. I'm only telling you this so you're not blindsided when the narrative flips." The narrative. God, that word hit hard. Because it reminded me that people like Brielle don't deal in truth. They deal in storytelling. She wasn't trying to repair what we had. She was preparing her audience for the next act. The one where she paints herself as misunderstood, where she frames me as fragile, broken, unavailable. I could already see it. She needed space. He's the one who disappeared. I tried to talk to him. He just ghosted. And somewhere in the middle of all that carefully constructed framing, the truth would evaporate. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Because I realized that this, all of it, had nothing to do with love. Not real love. It had been about convenience. About having someone there when it suited her, when her life wasn't too noisy, when she wanted the illusion of intimacy without the effort of sustaining it. I used to tell myself that if she ever apologized, maybe I'd feel closure. But here it was, her curated, digestible, bite-sized apology, and all it gave me was clarity. That closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes the moment you stop needing them to explain why they did. That night, I lit a candle on my balcony again. The same balcony I sat on during the first night she blew off dinner. But this time, I didn't sit with grief. I sat with choice. My choice. The choice to stay silent. To keep walking forward. To leave her words where they belonged. Buried in a caption that meant nothing to the man who no longer read between her lines. I hadn't planned on hearing from Keaton. In fact, I never thought I'd hear his name again, let alone from his own mouth. He was a shadow in my story, a background figure in blurry Instagram photos, a weekend-shaped question mark I tried not to stare at too long. The guy from that trip. The one Brielle swore was just a friend. The one who haunted my insecurities without ever saying a word. So when I opened my DMs and saw a message from an account I didn't recognize at first, username Keaton, and my stomach dropped. The message was short. "Hey man, I think you deserve to know something." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. My hands weren't shaking this time, but something in my chest felt heavy, like my body already knew what was coming. I wrote back. "Go on." Keaton didn't hesitate. He sent 3 messages, back to back. No fluff. No posturing. Just a confession in raw form. And somehow, that made it worse. He told me he had no idea I existed until months after that weekend getaway. Brielle had told him she was seeing someone on and off, but that it wasn't serious. That I was clingy, controlling, emotionally manipulative. Her exact words, apparently. She called me a comfort project. That phrase burned. Keaton said he believed her at the time. She was persuasive, magnetic. He admitted they got involved, emotionally first, then physically, and that the trip wasn't the first time they'd spent the night together. But it was the one that made him start questioning her. Because according to him, she lied to him too. She told him I knew about their connection, that we were in some sort of open exploration phase. She painted me as the one who couldn't let go, who clung to the fantasy while she tried to gently pull away. He told me he didn't buy it anymore. Not after he saw her post, the black and white photo with the sad caption. Not after he put the timelines together. Not after mutual friends started piecing things out loud that used to live in whispers. He said, I think I was the excuse she used to avoid confronting herself. And I think you were the shield she used to protect her from being alone. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. Because it wasn't just the betrayal that cut deep, it was how calculated it was. How Brielle built entire versions of people to serve her emotional architecture, without caring what those versions cost in the real world. And suddenly, it all made sense. The emotional gaslighting, the vague apologies, the strategic silence, the captions crafted like riddles. Her entire pattern of behavior wasn't just inconsiderate, it was a form of performance. She never thought the truth would catch up with her because she never expected the people around her to talk. But they did. The web unraveled. And I wasn't angry. Not the kind of angry that leads to revenge or hate. I was hollow. Like someone had finally opened the last window in a stuffy room and all the air rushed out. It wasn't just that she lied. It was that she believed I was too soft, too kind, too passive to ever walk away. She mistook my silence for weakness, my patience for blindness, my love for submission. But people like Brielle forget something crucial about people like me. We don't leave loudly. We don't set fires or break windows. We don't scream, look what you did. We just disappear. Quietly. Completely. And when the world starts asking where we went, it's already too late. That night, I didn't reply to Keaton. I didn't need to. His words weren't for redemption, and I didn't need closure from him. But I appreciated the honesty, even if it came far too late. Instead, I opened my notebook, the one I hadn't touched since the early days with Brielle, and wrote one line. She built a house of mirrors and blamed me for seeing clearly. Then I turned off my phone. Not in bitterness. Not in some dramatic final gesture. Just because I didn't need to carry her weight anymore. She had lied. She had spun stories. She had manipulated the narrative. And now, she could deal with the consequences of her fiction finally crumbling into fact. It's strange how silence becomes your language when you've spent too long explaining yourself to someone who never intended to understand you. A few weeks have passed since I last heard from Brielle. No new messages. No follow-ups. No fake emergencies. She tried one last time, a voice note I didn't even open. The transcription preview was enough. I just wish you'd let me explain. That was her final excuse. And I didn't need it. I didn't need her to explain why she manipulated the truth, or why she twisted my loyalty into weakness, or why she let someone like Keaton into her bed while I was writing poetry to her in mine. Because I'd learned something more valuable than any explanation could offer. Peace doesn't always arrive as an apology. Sometimes it shows up as your own silence. And in that silence, something unexpected started to grow. Me. I started waking up without that lump in my throat. I stopped rehearsing imaginary confrontations in the shower. I started going to my favorite cafe again, not because I hoped to run into her, but because I missed the cinnamon rolls and the barista who plays Miles Davis before noon. I picked up old habits. Journaling. Running. Talking to my brother again. I even started laughing. Really laughing. With people who didn't make me feel like I had to earn their attention. And that's when I met someone new. Not in the romantic way. Not yet. But her name's Sienna, and we bumped into each other at a bookstore. She asked if I'd read a certain memoir, and I told her I used to love reading until someone made me feel like my thoughts didn't matter. She didn't flinch. She just said, then it's time to start again. So I did. With myself. With honesty. With no more excuses from others or myself. I don't know if Brielle ever really cared. Maybe a part of her did, in the way a child loves a toy until it becomes inconvenient. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because I'm no longer available for half-effort relationships. No longer standing in doorways waiting for people to choose me. No longer mistaking red flags for passion. No longer calling manipulation bad timing. I've chosen myself. And to anyone listening, maybe you've been where I was. Maybe you're still there. Maybe you're waiting on someone's next excuse, hoping the right words will finally fix what's broken. But let me be clear. You don't need an apology to move on. You just need to stop waiting for one. Thanks for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. Now I want to hear from you. Speech balloon, have you ever received an apology that was more about them than about you? Or been ghosted by someone who tried to rewrite the story afterward? Drop your story in the comments. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today. And if this hit home, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's always more to confess. See you next time.